Hi, I'm Debbie Peverill, and what we're talking about today is better board meetings. This stuff, of course, would apply to lots of meetings, and we all spend a lot of time in meetings, so you want to hope that the meetings you go to are well planned, they're not a waste of your time, and they accomplish what they're set out to accomplish. So I figured out there are 7 strategies that help people have better meetings. I'm mainly focused on board meetings, but it could apply to any meetings. The first one is that you've got a clearly worded mission statement. So the organization knows what they're trying to do. They're having a meeting to advance their goals. Clearly, everybody knows why they're there. The second thing is the good strategic plan. You have a plan for achieving your goals, and we'll talk about how you can divide your strat plan up into bits and pieces so that every meeting you're talking about some piece of your strategic plan. You also want to have proper committees. We don't want to do committee work at the boardroom table. We want to have good meetings that accomplish things, so we need sometimes to divide the work up and give some of it to people who are subject matter experts and can get more work done, of course, at the committee level. Then you need a schedule. If you schedule the board meetings, you'll get better attendance. If you schedule them a year out, people will know to put those things in their schedule, and they're more likely to show up in the meeting. You want to maintain order at the meeting. You want it to run in a respectful way. You want it to be a safe place so that everyone can share their viewpoints. You don't want to be wasting time with a lot of arguing. You want to stick to the agenda. When you set up an agenda, and we'll talk about how to do that, you want to stick to it so that people can be prepared for the meeting and they know how long the meeting is going to take because they know what the agenda is. And lastly, you want to keep good minutes. The minutes are the legal record of what happened at the meeting, and you want those to be accurate and useful for the future. So let's start and talk about each one of those strategies. So the term mission or vision, I don't care what you call it. When I talk about a vision, what I mean is the ideal state that the organization is trying to achieve. If this group had gotten to the point where it was perfect, what does it look like? So I'm going to talk about a food bank. The food bank example, their vision is a world without hunger, or depending on what area they're talking about, a county without hunger or a city without hunger. That is the absolute vision, but that's not the mission. The mission is to pick some benchmark that they're going to get to either this month, this year, or over these next 2 years. When you set a mission, you can have a mission for a month, a mission for a week. Most people kind of stick to a mission for the year, so you need both of those things. The strategic plan has a process. We start out by determining what the vision is of the organization. Once people have agreed on that, then you can go on and talk about what part of that you're going to achieve this year or whatever time period you're talking about, and that's your mission. So the goals are a piece of that. What goals are we attempting to achieve? And you can divide them up by time as well. This month, next month, last year, whatever. Then we're going to document the strategies that are going to help us achieve the goal. And that's where the strategic plan gets its name, because we're going to pick strategies to help us achieve the goals, to get us to our vision. And once you've got goals, you can talk about them in every meeting, and you know why you're having a meeting. The last thing in the strategic plan, once you've got the vision, the mission, the strategies, is to determine the tasks. What specific tasks are going to help us achieve our strategy? Then you write it all down, and you refer to it, of course, as your strategic plan. One of the things we want to focus on is at a board meeting, you're only going to deal with board issues. At a committee meeting, you're only going to deal with committee issues. It's important that everyone who's at a meeting understands what the role is of that particular meeting in that particular group. So there are going to be management meetings, there's going to be committee meetings, there's going to be board meetings. Make it clear what we're talking about at each one of the meetings, like what the purpose is. When we go on about only talking about board business at a board meeting, how does it happen that you end up getting distracted? And one of the things is if you're being asked to do things that are management. If it's management's role to make some decisions, then management should be doing it. It shouldn't be referred to the board. The board sets the strategic direction. Management are the people who actually implement it. And secondly, what happens is that people don't stick to their mandate. They don't make it clear what the vision is, so they get distracted by items that really aren't within their mandate, not in their scope of authority, and they spend time on that. So back to my food bank. If we had the vision that we wanted to have this county, say, that has no hunger, then you're going to start thinking about what strategies will get us there. And there's a couple of different ways of looking at it. Hopefully everybody on the board wants to eliminate hunger, but they may not agree on the strategy to get there. An example of this would be some members might want to figure out why there are people who don't have enough money to buy food and try to address this by training and helping them get jobs where they made more money so that they could provide for themselves. And that's the strategy of, getting at the hunger at the source. The other strategy is to gather up food. You get food, non-perishable items, you provide a food bank, and you eliminate the effect of hunger. The first strategy eliminates the cause of hunger. Both of those are excellent strategies, but you don't want to have both those strategies being used at one boardroom table. There will be dissent, there'll be argument about it. That might need to be two different groups. One group that works on the causes and one group that works on the effects, and they would have more effective board meetings. So think about that. If you have a divided board, your meetings aren't going to be pretty, and it might be better to solve the problem of the divided board by dividing the people up into two different groups. The use of committees. Again, as I've said, don't do committee work at the boardroom table. That would be a waste. You will find, if you have good committees, that you will attract more people. Some people, subject matter experts in particular, are much more comfortable serving on a committee than they are serving on a board. Everybody's heard about board responsibilities. So they might be quite willing to lend their expertise to a specific area of the things that need to be done by your group, but they don't want to serve on the board. So that would be a good thing. We have more people to do work on a committee than we would have if everybody joined the board. There's a number of different committees you can set up, and every group will be slightly different. Typical ones, you need to have an audit or a finance committee, and in some cases you probably have both. The audit committee deals with the auditor. There's a surprise. The finance committee would be the ones who take a look in depth at the financial statements, and then when they present the financial statements to the board, they're able to answer any questions that board members would have. This doesn't mean that the board members don't have to understand financial information, but it does mean that they have a resource on the board who has spent a lot of time looking at these statements and are able to better answer the questions. You also will probably have a fundraising committee, and depending on what you do, if you have a lot of events, you might also have a programming chairperson or chair, and you might divide up each event into a subcommittee. What you're trying to avoid with this kind of committee work is you don't need the whole board to decide what color the decorations should be or what you're serving at a dinner. That's not work for the whole board to do. That's excellent work for a committee to do, and then the board could just provide some high-level approval once that information has been determined by the committee. Human Resource Committee, also known as HR. Depending on how many employees your organization has, you may or may not need a Human Resource Committee. You might just have a Human Resource person, but if you do have a number of employees, then a committee would be excellent. The Nominating Committee, I'll talk about the Nominating Committee again. They are the group that's responsible for finding new board members and also for supervising the behavior of the board members you have. So when we talk about attendance, I will mention that the Nominating Committee takes attendance and monitors that attendance for compliance with your rules. The Executive Committee, you may, depending on how long it is between your meetings, need to make some minor decisions. And the executive committee would do that. Then, depending on the terms of reference, they would have to get their decisions ratified at the next meeting. But it does allow for some work to get done between meetings that is time sensitive, likely. And of course, there's a governance committee. These are the people who would be responsible for policies and adherence to policies. Scheduling meetings. You know that nothing gets done unless there's a quorum. Most organizations' quorum is half of the board plus one. So if you have a 10-member board, you need 6 people for a quorum. Half of 10 is 5, plus 1 is 6, depending on the size of your board. Same deal. You will get a quorum more likely if you confirm and talk to board members before the meeting. Make sure you know who's coming and who's not coming. Board members must be trained to let you know if they're not going to be able to make it to a meeting. Because once you hear that a couple of people aren't coming, then somebody, and this again will be a job either for management or maybe the nominating committee, is going to take a look and figure out whether they're going to have quorum or not, and start confirming attendance with the other board members. You don't want to have a situation where people show up for a meeting only to find out there's no quorum. If a board member confirmed attendance and then doesn't show, you want to hope that that was an emergency, a last-minute type emergency. And again, the chair will have to spend some time with the board members so that they understand the behavior that's expected from them around attending meetings. We should make a policy that requires attendance at all meetings. All board members attend all meetings. There should be attendance taken, and the nominating committee would be responsible for monitoring that. You also need a policy for how many meetings someone can miss before they're asked to leave the board. Typical one would be 3 meetings in a year that a board member miss meetings. And I sometimes hear from people, well, it's hard to get board members. We wouldn't like to ask any of them to leave. But I would have to say that a board member who doesn't come to a meeting isn't actually a very useful board member. So you need to go find people that are a little more committed to your cause and come to your meetings. Technology can help us here. Canadian winters being what they are, a number of our retired board members are probably somewhere south during the winter. So you're going to want to use Skype, GoToMeeting, Zoom. That's some possibilities of technology you would use so that people, even though they're not in the area, they can still attend meetings. And therefore, the important business of the group can go ahead, and you don't lose board members because they're taking 3 months off in the summer. How frequently you meet is also a decision to be made by the organization. Some people would be more comfortable meeting for 2 hours a month. Other people would say, well, why don't we meet quarterly and meet for a full day? One of the decision points around that is how far do your members travel. Sometimes your meetings are too long, and therefore people are kind of reluctant to come to the meeting. They know that if they get there, it's going to take 4 or 5 hours out of their life. So you want to look at why the meetings are that long, or whether people are comfortable with that. If you're going to have long meetings, maybe you want to have them over a full day rather than in the evening. And we should look at why the meetings are so long. Is it because you're doing committee work at the boardroom table? Is it because you're not, making the agenda work for people? Do you not have productive discussions? You should take a look at that. The goals of an effective meeting, as I've said, is that participants are comfortable expressing their views. They should feel that it's a safe space, that they can say what they want. And one of the things we say about this is we're not talking about the personalities of a board member. When you disagree with someone, you disagree with their view. You don't disagree with them personally. They shouldn't feel threatened by a disagreement. And this is on the chair to make sure that there isn't the kind of conversation that makes people uncomfortable happening at your boardroom table. The meeting shouldn't be any longer than necessary, of course, and when people leave a meeting, they should feel like much was accomplished. This would be ideal. And some of this comes down to behavior. We have to train the participants not to interrupt other people when they're speaking. When someone's speaking, they should be allowed to finish speaking. They shouldn't be interrupted. Participants need to be open-minded. They should be willing to change their mind after they get to a meeting if they hear a better argument. They shouldn't be so set in their decisions that nothing will change their mind. Politics comes to mind around that. We want your board members to play well with others. We want productive meetings. So the agenda. The strategy around the agenda is that it's developed well before the meeting. You circulate a draft agenda a couple weeks before the meeting. People comment upon it. A lot of groups have issues of conflict of interest. If there's going to be something discussed on the agenda that you're in conflict with, you need to let the person who puts the agenda together know that, because you're not going to be able to be in the room while these items are being discussed, so you shouldn't be getting any information about that in the board package. So the board package is prepared once the agenda has been finalized so that you're not sending the wrong information to people. If someone's got a conflict, they don't get the information, as I've said. You also, of course, have to distribute the board package securely so that it doesn't end up going to anyone who shouldn't be getting access to it. And that comes back to how confidential is the information that you have in your group. Maybe it's not an issue because you're not dealing with confidential information. You should develop a standard agenda. I believe it should include calling the meeting to order, followed by the approval of the agenda, which should be a quick thing because everyone's seen it. Approving the minutes from the last meeting, which should also be a quick thing because everyone should have read the minutes before they got to the meeting. And this is a place for the chair to step in. If they find that people are coming to the meeting unprepared, so that they have to slow down and let them read the minutes, for example, before they approve them, then a quiet word should be had with that board member because that's not the behavior we expect. We expect people to come to the meetings prepared. After the minutes are approved, then we move on to the committee reports. We've listed the committees already. You might also have some ad hoc committees. The ones I listed earlier are standing committees. They pretty much always have a report, but there might be a special event or a special circumstance that's causing you to have an ad hoc committee, and then they would report as well. Is there any business not covered under committee reports? If so, the last item on the agenda, and then you have the adjournment. Are you going to let people add things to the agenda at the time of the meeting? My recommendation would be no, unless it is an urgent, time-sensitive matter. We've had a chance to look at the agenda. We've approved the agenda in principle anyway before the meeting. If people come to the meeting and then find out there's additions to the agenda, they're not prepared to talk about those things. They haven't been able to prepare. It's not in the board package. So there will certainly be situations that are urgent and time-sensitive, but save additions to the agenda for that purpose. That way you don't find that the agenda extends itself after the meeting actually starts. Minutes. Minutes are the official record of what happened at the meeting. Once the minutes are approved at the following meeting, then they are pretty much law. They are the legal history of the activities of the organization. So every group will decide how much detail they want in the minutes. You want enough detail so that people can understand how the decision was made, but you don't want a verbatim recording of the meeting because that would be too time-consuming. You also want to have the minutes taken by someone who's not a board member, because if you're taking minutes, you can't be participating in the discussion. So that doesn't work. Either you participate and don't take good notes, or you take good notes and you don't participate. Either way, we've lost the value of the board member. And as I said, the review of the minutes should take place before the next meeting actually occurs. So those are the strategies. Clearly worded mission statements so people know why they're there. A good strategic plan so you're moving forward to achieve the goals. The proper committees so you're not wasting time at the boardroom table. You set a schedule so you get good attendance. You maintain order so that you can achieve good discussions without there being fistfights and other troubles. You stick to the agenda and you keep good minutes so you know what you accomplished. I hope you find this useful. We do provide this information also in a written form. We have one of our governance guides called Better Board Meetings.